The richest man in the world gave away his entire fortune and died believing he'd failed. Andrew Carnegie spent the last 18 years of his life trying to undo what the first 70 had built. He wrote essays condemning wealth. He funded libraries in towns where his steel mills had broken men's bodies. He called the accumulation of riches beyond necessity a disgrace. And yet, when he closed his eyes for the last time in 1919, he hadn't given it all away. There were still millions left. He had run out of time. The question he never answered, the one that haunted him in those final years, was whether all that giving was charity or penance. He was born in a weaver's cottage in Scotland, where his father worked a loom by hand. The cottage had one room. The family ate porridge most nights. Andrew was small, sickly, underfed. But it wasn't hunger that marked him, it was the silence of his father after the factories came, after the machines made hand weavers obsolete, after pride turned to bitterness. His father stopped talking much, stopped working much. Andrew watched his mother take in sewing, watched her hands crack and bleed, watched her carry the family while his father shrank into irrelevance. He learned something visceral in that cottage, something that stayed with him longer than any lesson from a book. Work was survival, but more than that, usefulness was dignity. And the moment you became unnecessary, you became invisible. They left Scotland when Andrew was 12, borrowed money for passage, arrived in Pennsylvania with nothing. His father found work in a cotton mill. Andrew followed him there, a child laborer in the same kind of factory that had destroyed his father's trade. He worked 12-hour shifts. He made $1.20 a week, but he didn't resent it. He studied it. He watched how the machines worked, how the managers moved, how decisions flowed from the top down. He memorized the structure of power. And he understood, maybe before he could articulate it, that power in America didn't come from birth or land. It came from position, from making yourself indispensable. At 14, he became a telegraph messenger. He taught himself to read telegraph sounds by ear. He stayed late. He arrived early. He made himself useful to men with money. A railroad executive noticed him, hired him as a personal assistant. Andrew was 17. He studied that man the way he'd studied the factory floor. He learned how capital moved, how investments compounded, how a man could own a thing without ever touching it. He borrowed money, bought shares, watched them multiply. And for the first time in his life, he felt safe. Not because he had money, because he understood it. The Civil War came. Carnegie didn't fight. He managed railroads and telegraph lines for the Union, kept supply chains moving, made himself essential. He was 26 when the war ended, and he turned his small investments into a fortune. He moved into iron, then steel. He didn't invent a new process. He didn't discover a better method. He simply saw what was coming before others did. America needed steel to build railroads, cities, bridges. The demand was infinite. The profit margins were staggering, but the competition was ruthless. Carnegie built his empire on a single principle: cut costs, dominate pricing, crush competitors. He installed the Bessemer process before most American mills understood it. He bought his own iron ore mines, his own coal fields, his own railroads to ship materials. He eliminated every middleman. He controlled the entire supply chain. And he worked his men harder than anyone else in the industry. 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week. Dangerous conditions, minimal pay. When workers organized, he broke the unions. When a competitor undercut his prices, he slashed his own until they went bankrupt, then bought their mills. He was building something larger than a company. He was building a system that couldn't exist without him at the center. But something started to happen as he accumulated more. The hunger didn't fade. It sharpened.
every victory revealed a new threat. Every competitor crushed was replaced by another. The fear of becoming unnecessary, of losing relevance, of ending up like his father. It never left. It metastasized. He couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. He told himself it was about efficiency, about progress, about building America. But late at night in the mansion he'd built, surrounded by art and books and wealth beyond measure, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was still that child in the cottage, watching his father disappear into obsolescence. Then came Homestead, 1892. Workers at his steel plant in Pennsylvania went on strike, demanding better wages and conditions. Carnegie was in Scotland, vacationing in a castle he'd bought. He left the decision to his partner, Henry Clay Frick. Frick brought in Pinkertons, private security forces, armed men to break the strike. Violence erupted. Workers and guards exchanged gunfire. Men died. The state militia was called in. The Union was destroyed. Carnegie, thousands of miles away, claimed ignorance, said he would have handled it differently. But he didn't fire Frick, didn't reverse the decision, didn't restore the Union. He kept the profits that came from broken labor. The public turned on him. Newspapers called him a hypocrite. He'd written essays about the responsibilities of wealth, about the dignity of labor, about the moral obligations of the rich. And yet his mills ran on the bodies of men who could barely feed their families. He felt the judgment. It stung, not because he thought he was wrong, but because he couldn't reconcile the two versions of himself, the man who believed in progress and fairness, and the man who knew that softness in business was suicide. He sold his company in 1901 to J.P. Morgan for $480 million, the equivalent of hundreds of billions today. He was 65 years old, the richest man in the earth, and he spent the rest of his life trying to give it away. Libraries, universities, concert halls, peace foundations, he built thousands of them. He wrote that a man who dies rich dies disgraced. He meant it, or he wanted to mean it, but the money kept growing faster than he could distribute it. And the question lingered, unspoken but constant, was he giving it away because it was right, or because he couldn't live with what he'd done to get it? He married late, had one daughter, spent years traveling, writing, funding causes, but those who knew him said he seemed restless, unsatisfied. The same drive that built the empire now consumed him in philanthropy. He couldn't just give. He had to control how it was given, who received it, what they did with it. Even in generosity, he needed to be indispensable. The libraries bore his name. The institutions carried his legacy. He was still building monuments, still trying to prove he mattered. When he died, the world called him a great philanthropist. They named buildings after him, praised his transformation from industrialist to benefactor. But the money wasn't all gone, and the men who died in his mills, the families who'd lost fathers to his 12-hour shifts, the workers who'd been shot at Homestead, they didn't get libraries. They got nothing. Carnegie had tried to buy his way out of history, but history doesn't take bribes. He spent his whole life afraid of becoming irrelevant. He built an empire to prove he mattered. He gave away a fortune to prove he was good. But in the end, he's remembered as both and neither. A man who changed the world and couldn't change himself. A man who understood the cost of everything except what he'd lost along the way.